الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه استعين على أمور الدنيا والدين وصلى الله وسلم قاتب النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين عما بعد يا معشر المسلمين. As we want to benefit inshallah ta'ala in brief of the excellence in Islam, spiritual excellence in Islam. And when we mention the spiritual aspect of Islam, meaning Ihsan, this is the highest level of righteousness. So we want to take a brief benefit, inshallah ta'ala, of the spiritual excellence. As it is mentioned, the highest level of righteousness and faith a Muslim can achieve in Islam, it is the state of being when a Muslim perfects his worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his good character towards people. We should not be content simply to perform the minimum requirements of Islam, but rather we should strive towards spiritual perfection. Allah has made this lofty goal achievable for anyone who is willing to work for it. So the excellence is the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, all of the prophets who came after him as well. It can be seen in his readiness to surrender and submit himself to the Creator Jalla wa Ala and everything that he did. As Ibrahim, he was upon this way, submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم ومن أحسن دينا ممن أسلم وجهه لله وهو محسن واتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا. Who is better in religion than the one who submits himself to his Lord Jalla wa Ala while he is a good doer, وهو محسن, and he follows the religion of Ibrahim. He ماذا واتبعه واتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا. He follows the religion of Ibrahim, inclining towards the truth. And the religion of Ibrahim, he was a Muslim, submitting to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Naam ya ibadallah. And this is in Surah An-Nisa, Surah 4, Ayat 125. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has praised excellence in several verses of the Quran. It is the combination of all good, the combination of all good characteristics in Islam, such as submission to the will of Allah, with true faith, mercy, righteousness, and piety. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions in Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam, he mentions وَأَمَّا إِحْسَانٍ فَقَدْ جاء ذكره في قرآن وفي موضعه إلى الآخر. As for the excellence, it has been mentioned in the Quran in many places, sometimes associated with faith. تارة مقروبة وبإيمان وتارة مقرونا وبالإسلام وتارة مقرونا وبتقوى أو بفعل. نعم يا أيها الناس. He mentions, and sometimes it can be mentioned with Islam and sometimes with righteousness of good deeds. So this excellence of the religion of Islam, the spiritual excellence, it can be mentioned in the Quran in many places. وتارة ماذا بالإسلام. And then also it can be mentioned and sometimes with Iman and sometimes with righteousness, good deeds. And the excellence, like many other aspects of Islam, can be divided into two parts. So all of these aspects it is inclusive with Islam, like Iman and Taqwa and Ta'a. وَكَذَلِكَ يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِخْوَةِ. So, like many aspects of Islam, it can be divided into two parts. The excellence towards Allah Jalla wa Ala, sometimes referred as the vertical dimension of religion, and also an excellence towards the people. It's sometimes referred to as ماذا, the horizontal dimension of the religion. As Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he mentions وإحسان نوعين إحسان في إبادة خالق وإحسان إلى المخلوق. Excellence has ماذا, two types: excellence in worship, إحسان في إبادة, excellence in worship of the Creator Jalla wa Ala, and an excellence towards the creation itself. And as for the excellence of worship, it is to be fully conscious and aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of the prayer and in other aspects of devotion, as if we are able to see Allah Jalla wa Ala directly with our own eyes, that is to worship Allah as if we can perceive Him and all of the realities of the unseen world. Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, he said, "An ماذا تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك في صحيح Muslim." He said, excellence is to worship Allah as if you see Him, for although you do not see Him, but certainly He sees you. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions in his Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam, فقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم في تفسير إحسان أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه. He mentions about this prophetic hadith. He says that you worship Allah as if you see Him. This indicates that the servant worship Allah in the manner which is consciousness of His immanence, and that he is in front of Him as if he sees Him. This requires reverence. This requires reverence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This requires reverence for Allah Jalla wa Ala. وَمَاذَا, and also this requires also that a person وَذَلِكَ يُوجِبُ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ وَخَوْفُ وَمَاذَا, and it requires reverence, fear and veneration of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَعْظِيم of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and veneration and glorification. And also it requires that a person sincerity in worship, and the effort to make it excellent and complete and perfect. نعم يا عباد الله، هذه إحسان. So achieving the excellence in the prayer, it is a difficult task, and it can take a lifetime to finally perfect it. You find that some people have moving around in the prayer, and they have these different movements and thoughts and so forth inside of the prayer. So at times it also can be difficult, but it takes discipline, and it takes that the servant is awareness, and his veneration and glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we can practice in small steps, which over time will accumulate and help us reach our goal. So we should also consider the advice of the Salaf al-Salih for how they were able to perfect their worship. As it comes in the hadith, it is mentioned that Rabah reported, it was said to Hatim al-Asam, how do you pray so well? How do you perfect your prayer? أقوم بأمري وأمشي بخشيتي وأدخل بنيتي وأكبر بعظيمتي وأقرع بترتيلي يعني القرآن وتفكر وأركع بخشوع وأسجد بتواضع وأجلس لتشهدوا. لماذا؟ لتشهدوا تشهدي بتمام وأسلم بماذا؟ بسبيل وسنتي وأسلمها بإخلاص الله عز وجل وأرجع على نفسي بخوف وأخاف أن لا يقبل مني وأحفظه بجدي إلا موت. Or كما قال رحمه الله تعالى. So he says, I establish the command, I walk with fear. أقوم بأمري وأمشي بخشيتي. I walk with fear. I begin my prayer with the sincere intention. I exalt Allah Jalla wa Ala with grandeur. I recite with the measured recitation and reflection. I bow with reverence. I prostrate with humility. I sit to complete the testimony, and I invoke peace properly according to the prophetic tradition. Then I sincerely surrender the prayer to Allah Jalla wa Ala, and I return myself afraid that it would not be accepted from me. I guard it with effort in this way until I die. So the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an important part of true faith and a perfect prayer. So we should always be concerned that we perform our prayers sincerely as best as we can, lest they be unacceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at the same time, hope in Allah is an equally important part of Iman and worship. Our worship should balance the fear of the hellfire with the hope of paradise. And in doing so, we will achieve a peace of mind unbeknownst to most people on the earth, that is unknown to most of the people on the earth. So the righteous, the Salaf Salih, they used to say that peace and happiness they had in their hearts will be the envy of the rich and the powerful, if only they knew about it. If only the rich and the powerful, if only those people who disbelieve, if only those people that's in authority with power, if only they knew the richness and the tranquility and the peace and the happiness that the Muslim feels when he prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If only they knew. But they are the ones who envy. They are the ones who are the envious of people. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he says some of the scholars, وَيَقُولُ آخَرُ, some of the ulama, they would say, لو علم الملوك وأبناء ملوك ما نحن فيه من النعم وسرور. If only the kings of the world and their sons knew what we have of blessings. لو علم الملك لو علم مملوك وأبناء الملوك وأبناء مملوك. If the kings of the world and their sons knew what we have of blessings and happiness, they would fight us for it with their swords. If only they knew the favors and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would fight us for these blessings. The source of this you can find in Jawab al-Kafi. Along with the excellence in worship, it must be excellence in good character and behavior towards people and the creation in general. The components of this excellence are expressed in the Quran, where Allah Jalla wa Ala, He mentions in Surah Al-Ali Imran, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ أَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. Hasten to forgiveness, hasten to the forgiveness from your Lord, and a garden as wide as the heavens and the earth, prepared for the righteous, those who spend in charity at times of ease and difficulty, who suppress their anger, and they pardon the people. For Allah loves those who are of the excellent, those who are muhsinun or muhsinin. Surah Ali Imran, ayat 134. So the components of excellence and behavior consist of the mindfulness of Allah Jalla wa Ala and taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that prevents us from committing sins. Charity as a philosophy of life, as a way of life. This is a person's way. Charity is his philosophy, controlling one's anger and forgiving the people. The truly excellent are those who have all of these characteristics in their deeds. وقال الرازي رحمه الله تعالى في تفسير الرازي, he mentions these three characteristics of mother, of charity, controlling one's anger and forgiving the people. He mentions these three characteristics are combined in good behavior towards others. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned their rewards. Allah loves those who are excellent. Indeed, the love of Allah for a servant is the most comprehensive degree of reward. What this amounts to is not simply doing good deeds for those who are good to us, but rather it is doing good deeds. It is doing a good deed for those who are rather evil to us, who are bad to us. And likewise, we should not return an evil deed with another evil deed, but rather forgive people and overlook their faults. As it is mentioned, it is reported, Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about a hadith, the Prophet was not indecent. She mentions that the Prophet was not an indecent person. He was not ماذا فاحشة أو ماذا ولا متفاحشا or متفاحشة. He was not indecent. He was not obscene. ولا صخبا في أسواق. He would not shout in the marketplaces. And he would not respond to an evil deed. ولكن يا أيها الإخوة, he would pardon and overlook. وَيَعْفُو وَيَسْفَحُ. He would pardon and overlook. You can find this in the Sunan of Tirmidhi. وَكَذَلِكَ يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِخْوَةِ, Sha'bi reported, Isa alayhi salam, the son of Maryam, Isa alayhi salam, he said, verily excellence is that you are good to those who are evil to you. Excellence, إنما الإحسان أن تحسن إلى من أساء إليك ليس إحسان أن تحسن إلى من أحسن إليك. نعم يا عباد الله. Really excellence is that you are good to those who are evil to you. Not merely that you are good only to those who are good to you. Surah ماذا تفسير Ibn Kathir. So he mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed such excellence in all matters and in everything we do. We should strive to be just, pious, compassionate, kind, healthy, wise, knowledgeable, and generally beneficial to people around us. Even when we slaughter an animal, that we are merciful towards it. And we should do so in the most compassionate way by minimizing the animal's pain and fear. Shaddad ibn Aus, radiallahu anhu, he reported the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, verily, Allah has prescribed excellence in everything. Inna Allah kataba ihsan ala kulli shay. He has prescribed excellence in everything. Fi Sahih Muslim. So this is what we want to benefit by here in brief. Inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefit us from that what we heard. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefit us from this beautiful kalam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward those who are listening attentively. بإذن الله كريم. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.